Okay, perfect. Okay. All right. Well, Gail Parks, thank you so much for doing this.
Oh, the pleasure's mine. Thanks
And I understand that you have an announcement to make.
I do. As of Wednesday this week, I have clear sailing to run for council. I know I'm a little late to be entering the game because I like to have things done in an orderly fashion, but I'm going to catch up and I'm going to be there. And I am so excited to be doing something for a city that I just love.
Well, I was very thankful that I heard that you're going to be running.
Thank you.
My whole purpose from the get-go, even back in March, where I just wanted to see good candidates run, and I was pushing. And I mean, you know what it's like. It's difficult to put your name forward, especially you have people have lots of things going on, and it's a job that requires dedication. But of course, you know all about that because you used to be a city councillor.
I was. I actually bring such a different experience to the table because I had 9 years of council in Ontario.
Wow,
in
I
a
didn't know that part.
community where we had standing committees. And it's something I so firmly believe in because it involves council in a way, it makes them really functional because they have a view to all of the departments that they represent, how the budget works in each of those. And they bring a wealth of good experience to the table when they're involved in that fashion. I hope it's something, should I be elected, that we can look at.
Can you explain, just for me, really, what's the difference from that experience to what we have today in Red Deer?
Well, today we don't have in my view, so I don't want to color this by anybody else's view, this council doesn't have real responsibility. If you have a standing committee and you happen to be a chair, which I was, then I was chair of what we call public works. My responsibility in my second term was transit, fire department, and public works.
Okay.
A big responsibility, but for me, it made the most sense because it's the heart, the guts, the soul of the town.
Yeah.
And it led me to where I could do wonderful things for our staff and the community. We brought in the first new fire truck in like 20 years.
Okay.
Which we bought in Red Deer.
Well, maybe you can do that again in Red Deer.
I would be so excited to see that happen.
Yeah.
Because I think it makes you far more responsible. So I sat on planning for those 9 years.
Okay.
I attended, and you're allowed to sit on every single committee. I happened to be lucky to chair the dream for me. I didn't sit on finance and I didn't go to those because my experience and the experience I wanted was vastly different. But I sat on planning because that, as you can see in the city of Red Deer, so desperately needs solid, good planning that should come from our engineering staff and help us to bring in the kinds of planning and zoning, the things that the city really needs.
Mm-hmm.
I see it as backwards. The developers presented to the planning committee, and planning committee, the chair of planning committee, presented to council, and staff was a resource for council. It seems to me, and I could be all wrong, but it seems to me that it's backwards here. The staff deal with the developers. They can't possibly be a resource for council because they've already set all the parameters with the developers.
Mm-hmm.
And council never gets to speak to a developer to find out things like, how do you keep the dust down? Like I've seen things that bothered me, like a truck going to get water at a fire hydrant. And what are you doing? Oh, we're getting it for a developer. Nobody should have a key to that fire hydrant except the firefighter. And I was quite aghast at it. I tend to be a little bit black and white.
Okay.
And so never put me in charge of security because it wouldn't be for me. But because we could sit, I always attended Parks and Recs committee meetings because that's everyday involvement. You walk in the parks, you do sports in the arenas and the centers, and it had big outreach to the community. And we always wanted to fall on the side of affordability for young families who wanted their kids involved in sports. My oldest granddaughter played pond hockey.
Okay.
She wanted to play hockey. It was affordable. Minor hockey it's just a very high end sport. Both my girls played basketball and they played soccer. They're very involved. They're both swimmers.
Hmm.
But pond hockey for her was quite a love.
Well, it's really difficult right now for families because I mean I have 5 children of my own, and I can tell you going to the Goulet, that is a $60-$70 experience for my family. And if we want to do a yearly pass, we're talking thousands of dollars. And this is, I shouldn't say thousands, but we're talking, I think it's about $1,200-$1,300 for a yearly pass right now.
Right.
And that is considering as well that is subsidized by the taxpayer as well, right? We subsidize that. And so the cost is astronomical. And I don't know how we get past that because things cost money. And of course, the city can't, just tax everyone through the yin-yang to make everything free. But it's something that right now I feel like council, there's a disconnect between the experience of people's lives and
I so agree with that.
it's just the affordability
So
because
agree with that. Maybe just finding our way if we ever get to standing committees, and I'm pretty sure both Calgary and Edmonton have standing committees, we can find a way inside those committees to at least have a conversation that could perhaps lead us to some ideas where we're able to bring those costs down so that families can afford it.
And they're to the city's credit. I don't want to be unfair. There are programs, but every time there's a program, that's a hurdle.
But they fill up very quickly
And
as well.
Yes, exactly. So I was curious, not necessarily moving on, but so you were a counselor from 2007 to 2010.
Yes.
All right. So I moved to here in 2010. So I think you were just coming off council when I moved here. So I never even got to know you at all as a counselor. What would you say is the biggest difference today compared to when you served that you notice, of course?
Crime.
Yeah.
Crime. I've been thinking what kind of analogy you could use for our downtown that is so empty and a place that I like to go. We had a tree at our cottage years ago, and we had an arborist to cut down a tree. And he asked, could he walk the property, which he did. And he came back and he said, the tree in the front of your deck has to come down. And we went, but it's got full bark. It's got green leaves. It looks really healthy. He said, trust me, it needs to come down. And when he cut that tree down, the inside was dead. The bark had grown around. It looked beautiful from the outside, but the inside, that core was absolutely dead. And thank goodness, because it could have damaged our property tremendously. When I look at the city of Red Deer and see empty streets downtown, empty stores, it's heartbreaking because that inside core, the beauty of that is that we grow from the inside out, not the outside in. And what are we going to do to change that, to bring shoppers downtown, to bring businesses back downtown, to rid ourselves of an element that keeps us from going and to find conversations around it. We all put our heads around or think about what we might do for homeless that will give them a future without robbing us of the beauty of a downtown core of our city. I'd like to see maybe a 2-year project where we don't charge for parking and we get our community back downtown. We get neighboring communities that want to come and shop in Red Deer downtown because it's such a pretty place to be. And I don't know if that's viable, but we have to start somewhere. And so trying to think outside the box of what might happen with that. I fear that our police presence isn't enough.
Well, and then there's the revolving door sort of element too. I don't know how much that plays into Red Deer, but that is a concern.
Well, it has to play into crime for sure.
Yeah.
It's a walkable city. People love. You can see on a bright winter day, the streets are filled with people out walking. A summer day or an early spring day, and people are out with their dogs and they're just ambling along and happy. And I'd like to see that throughout the city, not just on the trails. Let find a way to get there if we can.
One thing that I consistently bring up is that I don't want my children going downtown, of course, right? Like I don't want my wife and kids going downtown to go shopping unless I'm with them. I think a lot of families would think the same way. I don't think that's just my family. And I think it's so difficult because there's two problems that often get conflated, and there's the addiction crisis and then there's the homelessness, right? And of course there's crossover there, but they're not the same thing. You don't have every single homeless person isn't addicted. And right now with the financial pain that people are going through, of course people are a paycheck or two away from having that situation themselves. And so I certainly don't have the answers myself, but I liked what you said as far as thinking outside the box, because I look at a lot of programs that we've done and it's like we're just copying the same programs that have failed elsewhere.
Well, somebody mentioned recently the Citizens on Patrol. Maybe that's something we need to go back to, Citizens on Patrol. I think the people that were involved with it loved it. They were doing something for the community that they truly enjoyed. I believe my daughter might have been part of that at
Okay.
one time or another. I do have good friends that were part of it. I don't know why they stopped. But
Yeah,
again,
neither do I.
the absence of conversation around this, the absence of police presence, bustling streets that 10 years ago
Mhm.
where it was a joy. I mean, I love to shop downtown. I want to support community, local businesses.
Yeah.
I'm not taking away from the people who've invested in larger enterprises, but that small family business can only survive if we are there walking through
Mhm.
their door.
Well, and I talked to one business person recently, and they're expressing the same sentiment where it's like we're the ones that invest in the community. We're the ones that, when there's a soccer team, their jerseys, we pay for them and we sponsor them, and because we see we are here, and when this community is doing well, we are doing well, right? And there's a investment there that goes both ways, and
There's also wanting to give back to
yeah,
Calvin.
100%.
And I always want to give back. I'm so grateful for the many good things about this city, and finding ways to give back to the community is, for me, it just makes me happy to do that.
Okay. Gail, you just are entering the race now. I don't think, have you done an intent form yet, or are you just going to do it all at once?
Could you repeat that, please?
Sure. So you're just gathering your signatures right now.
I have all my
And you have
signatures
all your signatures
ready to turn in on
Congratulations.
Monday morning. And
Congratulations.
thank you. I'm pretty happy about that. Because I'm self-funded. So it's a personal choice for me. But all those years ago, when I first ran for council in the 90s in Ontario, my husband and I made the decision that we would pay for our campaigns ourselves. I'm not suggesting that's right for everyone.
Yeah.
And I have no comment on how anybody else does that. It's just how I want to do it for
Mhm.
myself. And at this late date, the only thing I can really do is print, mail, and social media.
Yeah.
And I guess truly doing signs right now is just a little above what I want to spend.
Yeah.
Even so,
It is
like
expensive.
$6,000 or $7,000 is going to be a bare bones campaign. And that's just the today prices and the cost of doing business today.
Yep.
Where 10 years ago, $10,000 was a very big campaign and it gave you everything. And so I'm mindful of the money that I'm going to spend because I am self-funding. Believe me, I think it's money well spent.
For sure. Well, you clearly care about the community. I've seen some of your comments online, and you very much come across to me as a fighter and someone who sees what's right and wrong. And I very much, I mean, you said it yourself that you see very much black and white in some instances, right? And I appreciated what you said about the Housing Accelerator Fund online, and that kind of went.
I'm so
out there.
disturbed that council decided to pass a resolution to keep the Accelerator Fund. It bothers me that given the backlash from the community, council should understand that they're not in sync
Yeah.
with the community.
Yes.
And for my money, I want to see us withdraw from it completely. I have in the last few days talked to folks, and one of the comments was, well, they've already spent money. or they've already received money. And my answer is send it back. Do we have that maybe $3 million? I'm going to say that because that was a figure that was kind of bandied around, that they already received $3 million. The other $9 million would come kind of when the first fourplex or eightplex was started. I do not want to spend that $3 million that we don't have. By the same token, we have to be mindful that we're not protecting our community. And for us to have a resolution sitting on the books that you can just click like that and we're right back where we were again, I just can't believe that we're kind of coming in the back door to do what we can't do at the front door.
Well, it just seems like administration is controlling things, and they're the ones pushing, and council is just being dragged along, but willingly. They're just, okay, we'll go ahead. And maybe I'm being unfair there, but it does seem, I like what you said. It's they're not in sync. Like it's so clear that there's this misalignment of where council's heading and where the community is.
So, the three little historical communities downtown, Pines downtown, they had, there was an acronym used at a meeting. And I think it was kind of like and I can't find it, and I can't find anyone who can tell me about it. But I believe it was like a guide to preserve the historical community of Parkville, Waskesiu, and so on.
Yeah.
And we have to go back to that. Why some council would take that protection away from them defies all logic to me, because if you don't protect that, then you're not going to protect anything else. But here we are having communities that are already built out, and in their wisdom, they're adding units to an already built out subdivision with one road in, one road out. Do you know that sets my teeth so ajar? Because first of all, that community bought as a built out community.
Yeah.
Now they're being subjected to additional building that they didn't count on when they bought there.
Yeah.
There's a safety factor that just, I can go back to my years as chair fire, where that would have been the very first top of mind in our committee meeting, would be whatever we're doing, is there a safety factor involved with this? When you have roads that are already underbuilt and you're adding additional units to that, what in the world would any thinking person not have safety first? And the streets are filled with cars. And now you've got to get fire trucks down there. What if you have to get an ambulance down there, Calvin? There's something really and truly wrong with that. And we need desperately to go back and redo some of these and fix what this council has done that is just so darn wrong. And I told you I'm black and white. I'm very black and white on this. It's not safe. It's not safe.
That's an interesting perspective. I haven't heard that one. I really appreciate that. I never considered, if there's only one access point, how that would affect the safety of fire and the safety of ambulance. That's something new. I mean, I do this podcast to try to learn as much as I can, and, help people and whatnot as far as sharing their own thoughts. And then here's an instance of learning, right? So thank you.
I get very passionate about things like this. And for your audience, I'm a very opinionated person, but I hope when I'm doing that it's something that I've thought out.
Yeah.
And I want something better out of it.
Yeah. Well, one thing too, it's fine of being opinionated. Part of council's job, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you feel I'm wrong, is we're mainly listeners, and we have to listen when we are in council. I say we need to die to ourselves, because we can have all the agendas in the world that we want to push, but at the end of the day, we're representatives of Red Deerians. That's what I truly believe. And so I ask myself, has council been listening this past term, or we can go further back than that? Has council been listening? It seems like a lot of these things are not. Well, let's just go back to what you said. They're misaligned. They're not actually listening to the people of Red Deer, because it's so clear to me And I think it's so clear to most people, even like with the firefighter situation, there's questions that need to be asked and all that kind of stuff, both sides. That's fair. Like we shouldn't be able to go back and forth, but it's clear that the community sees this as an issue.
We want an
And
open dialogue.
there you go. And it seems like I go back to this idea that, because I was asked, what's the most important issue to you? And that's actually a hard question.
It is.
And I never realized how hard of a question that is until I start, because I could just say, well, it's this issue this week or this issue the next week. But to go down to the root, it's just a lack of respect. And we need to get back to council respecting the people that put them there.
Absolutely. Servants of the people. We do forget that. And it's a difficult thing, council is somewhat elevated in the community. And you have to be very grounded to realize that the reason you're there is to work for the people who put you there. And we aren't listening. We wouldn't have this issue with the fire department. We're not listening. We wouldn't have some of this wasteful spending. We're not listening. $5 million for those parking meters downtown.
Is that how much it was?
A 5-year contract. I stand to be corrected. I think I got the right information. A 5-year contract, $5 million. And it's not working. The people that would like to go downtown do not want to face those parking meters. Why would we do something that is so difficult for the citizens that we represent? If we're going to spend that kind of money, make sure we're doing it, that it's to their benefit, not to their detriment.
Yeah.
$5 million for 9 holes at Riverbend to upgrade Riverbend. I'm not suggesting for a minute that maybe we didn't need it, but surely to goodness, they should be working to have some kind of reserve as they move forward with it's well used, it's well liked, it's a very beautiful course, and I wouldn't like to see it gone. Like all things, it does need good planning behind it.
I mean, with the golf course, I just have to me, it just goes back to, why are we funding something that is naturally competing with another golf course in town?
Absolutely.
Why are we funding something when the hierarchy that we have as far as expenses is out to lunch right now?
And we haven't mentioned the footbridge.
Well,
my
goodness. I'm trying not to, because in the past I would just hammer on, like, my old self would just hammer on that. I think it's recognizing the community that the footbridge was a foolish endeavor. It's just an example. It's an example. And I'm in my mind to say, okay, well, they're working on that. There's no way we're going to, take that away. It's probably going to be done pretty soon. Regardless, I'm like, how many footbridges on a smaller scale exist in that budget right now?
Yes.
It might be $50,000. It might be $100,000. We'll never know, because it's hidden behind all these little layers of, it's hard to read. The annual report actually provides very little information. It's actually shocking how little information the annual report provides.
But that's a serious issue.
100 and some pages, and for whatever reason, protective services is lumped in with parking. And can you believe that? Protective services and parking. And I'm like, well, what's what? Like, I was trying to figure out some data as far as emergency services. Well, no, I actually can't figure that out via the annual report. And so one thing that I want to do is I want to go through that budget line by line. That's going to take years.
Wouldn't you like to just see a budget, Calvin, instead of a service plan?
Yeah.
Like, I'd like to see a 15-page budget instead of a 200 or 300 service plan with one line of budget inside whatever that department might be. Dennis Moffat, many, many years ago, told me that this city hadn't seen a straight budget in 50 years. He was a long-time counselor. He was a man I love to listen to. I thought he too had lots of thoughts outside of the box. And I'm quite sure that it would be a completely different process for us if we were just dealing with figures. And you're looking at a budget line by line, but each one of those lines represents an item inside that budget, not colored by a service plan so that someone can say to you, yeah, but if you change this, you're changing the service. I know that is important, and we're not looking to cut service, but we have to be mindful that we're also deeply in debt, and we're not anywhere near where we should be.
Have you read the financial roadmap that was released in July?
I did not.
You shouldn't. Well, you're a council candidate, so you should. in the next 10 years, if things don't change, they're projecting over 500 million of debt. And the worst case scenario is nearly 800 million by 2034.
Oh, isn't that
And
disgraceful?
the good news is that's based on if council doesn't change policies. And of course, we want to change policies.
Absolutely.
Right. And there is hope. There is hope. Best case scenario is still an increase of debt. It does paint a little bit of a brighter picture as far as our reserves go and whatnot, but it's still, you can't rely on the best case scenario. And I think council needs to be in charge here. Council needs
No
to
kidding.
take the reins here.
No kidding. I want to go back to our standing committees. Council's in charge.
Yes.
And there is no such thing, as a counselor told me, going to the open meeting on the Accelerator Fund.
Mm-hmm.
I questioned that there were no counselors in that room. I found it very, very strange that they weren't here to hear for themselves what citizens had to tell them. And in speaking with a counselor, I'm not going to use a name because I don't think that's fair, that they're advised not to go because they would pick up the citizens' bias. Well, tell me, honestly, are they getting staff bias in all of that? Because there was somebody at the table that I sat at that said, because I'm lamenting there are no counselors here. How do they get this message? And there was a gal beside me that I've known for a very long time. She said, if Gail Parks was sitting on this council, nothing would keep her away.
Yeah.
And I thought, why isn't there more of that on council? Because this is where they should be. The citizens are giving you their best and their fondest hope that we're going to be going forward with something that is good for everyone. And to hear that staff is advising council not to. Since when did staff tell council what to do?
Yeah.
Whenever.
I know. And it makes them seem like children. It makes them seem like they are not wise enough to sit at the council table because they can't handle just to go and listen. And I can understand where it's like, hey, look, you can go, you can listen. We advise you not to participate with your own opinions and your own thoughts because this is a listening thing. And your purpose of attending there is just to receive information so you can make an educated choice. I can understand if that was the administration push where it's just go, listen, be the fly on the wall so that you can understand where citizens are coming from.
Well, there wasn't any choice, Calvin, because the tables were set up so that all you could do was listen. There was no conversation. There were no question and answer. It was simply, we're going to show you where we want you to go. You can give us some feedback on that. But in the end, they were going to decide what the answer was. And the upshot of that was for them to, on the 21st or 25th of July, I think the 21st, that they passed a resolution. So how much did they really listen? Mm-hmm. We want to withdraw from the Accelerator Fund so our community is not at risk from a federal government that wants to pull strings in our community that we just cannot afford.
Mm-hmm. And of course, right now, they did away with the 4 as a right, but it's like you said, it's essentially a Band-Aid because we still have the potential for the 4-plexes and 8-plexes within 800 meters of transit. So all those heritage communities down there are still at major risk and almost ironically even more because they did say in that meeting that they would still meet the criteria of the full Housing Accelerator Fund, which means they need to put exactly the same amount of locks and doors up and they say, oh, well, this one isn't as of right. You have to follow the process. Well, now it's basically the city approves it or they don't get the money. And so where this is wrong. This is so clear what's going to happen. You could see it from 100 yards out.
What I heard in conversation with someone who lives there this week is that developers are in there buying up properties. They expect in the future to be able to go do what they want to do, and they'll get their permits and it will be an easy build for them, and it will destroy not just those communities. It's going to destroy any community where they build.
I find that the city, this is just my own opinion, I find the city wants to make developers a bad guy. And I just have to, I always remember in the back of my mind, we need the developers to build out our communities and we want them here. Now they're going to take advantage because they're a private business. If the city creates a regulation that allows them to do something,
That
why wouldn't
wasn't
they,
meant
right?
to be a slur, honestly, on
No,
developers. They're taking advantage of a
well, they're
situation
being
that's
good
already
business
out
people,
there.
right? I just say that in a sense of like, we have to remember the buck stops with council, right? And that's where it begins and that's where it ends.
Absolutely.
And if they open up a zoning, the council opens up a zoning, well, it's almost like it's free reign for anyone to do anything because that's council did that, right? But I'll point to, we have Calgary and we have Edmonton as examples already. We know what's going to happen. And the perception is that these will be affordable homes. Well, you look at Calgary and Edmonton, what happened to that land value as soon as that went through? The land went up 25% in
My,
1 year.
my.
And you really think that that's going to create affordability?
Well,
It's not. It's not. You're just pushing everything up.
if you read anything about the Accelerator Fund, there isn't one comment on affordability. None of this is meant to
Mm,
be affordable.
mm,
It is to increase housing. Do we really have a housing crisis in Red Deer, or do we have an affordability crisis in
mhm.
Red Deer? I don't know. I'm open to hear that conversation and that discussion. But where are all of these folks coming from that we have a housing crisis?
Well, I mean, I'm in construction. I can tell you that there is significant demand. And I think that this demand starts from Vancouver. And I have multiple family members who moved to Alberta because they took advantage of Vancouver and the lower mainland's high prices. And then Calgary grew so much. And now this is 3 years later, essentially. And we're starting to see that offset of Calgary growing. And now it's like, well, Red Deer's not so bad. I used to drive an hour through rush hour. So what's the difference of driving an hour on the highway when you can afford a house
Yeah.
significantly less in Red Deer? I think that that's partly and mostly really what's happening. It's just we're seeing that effect and that draw from those, that Vancouver pricing where we've had tens of thousands of people move and they mostly move to Edmonton. They mostly move to Calgary and places like that. And I think that now we're actually drawing people from Calgary and Edmonton
I don't know if we
because
had
of
ever
affordability.
used bedroom community around the city of Red Deer because I don't think it is. But when we moved to the Greater Toronto area, we lived in a community that was a bedroom community and my husband drove an hour and a half one way. His days were like 14 hours because of all the hours he spent on the road to get to and from a job. And I can see people driving to Calgary or Edmonton easily because we experienced that. That does make sense why we would have a need for more housing, but I'm not sure that we should be putting crisis on.
No, I agree. And I think part of it too is that there's a recognition. I read a book, it's called You'll Pay for This. I forget who it's by, but it's by a fellow out of Winnipeg. And he was basically, is a municipal book on taxation of how we got where we are now. And all the cities are somewhat facing the same thing. Winnipeg's a little bit worse as far as their situation, but it was basically saying that when you're in a bad area, you need to push for denser housing because it's cheaper. It's less pipe. There's less tax draw. There's a little bit less frontage on your property. And all those things add up where the city is trying to fix a problem that they started 20 years ago by backloading taxes because they actually will profit in a sense off of the dense houses, whereas the single family houses, they will, in their minds at least, I'm not saying this is actually the case, they will lose money on. So they're treating it as though the city's a business to profit off of homes. And they're saying, well, which way can we make the most amount of profit? Now, I don't know if that's, a day-to-day conversation with an administration, but it did make me pause and be like, okay, well, we did create problems from 20 years ago that we're now starting to pay the price. You could look out 10 years and see where we're going. I mean, I partly did. I ran for council before and I saw where we were going and this is where we are
We
now,
all
right?
know about Calgary sprawl.
Yes.
And that is where Red Deer, we do need to build up. I'm not disagreeing with that for a minute. And I live in a condo. It's great living as a single person. I have no responsibilities outside of, and
Sometimes I wish I could have that too.
I wouldn't have chosen to be that single person. I didn't choose that, but I find having lived almost all of our married life in our own home to living in something that I own, but is in is set inside a bigger setting.
Mhm.
That it's quite good living.
Yeah.
There is no reason to be afraid of density that builds up.
No, of course not. And I'm not against dense homes. I mean, we're in Lancaster here, there's a townhome project down here. And I'm like, this is great. This is exactly where it needs to be. This makes a sense. You just look at it and it's like, hey, this is right for Red Deer. But some of these things where, they're changing the situation, they're changing the zoning, and then they're basically changing the rules, like somewhat like you said,
Midstream,
yeah,
midstream.
midstream, 10 years later, 15 years later. And I find if you're going to do that, the amount of communication and respect for each other that you need to have needs to be, you need to set the example here when that sort of thing happens.
We need to set it
And
in many places.
just
Like,
ramming through
I
right now.
find we don't have police on the street the way we should. I hope we're going to see a police commission instead of a committee, which is arm's length from City Hall and better, and that they're organized to be mindful of this community
Mhm,
first.
mhm.
And the direction from a commission is completely different than a committee that has absolutely no responsibility and no accountability. You're going to ask me what's the difference. The difference is commissions are appointed,
Yeah.
and they involve the community as well as the police and staff. And I think it's the best of both worlds.
Is it somewhat the difference of like a review board compared to a board that works and creates policy together? Is
Yes.
that sort of the difference? Okay,
Yes.
yeah, that makes
A
sense.
little bit like that. We have, and the other thing, I would hope that we're going to do a real review of committees. We have committees that have budgets. If you have a committee you have council sits on a board, and that board actually uses taxpayer money. And let me use the library as an example. That's a budgeted function of council. Council does not receive the minutes from that committee.
Okay.
But they have a very large budget that council has to approve. Why in the world would council not want to know what's going on in that committee? Because it's taxpayer money that affords them to be there. And so I want to take full responsibility for committees like that by receiving minutes that become part of your package. You may just have a motion to receive, but at least you'll read it and you'll know what's going on. And I say that truly of all committees that have a budget attached to them. Committees that don't have a budget attached to them, they're not sending minutes either. Riverbend is another example of taxpayer dollars. I think committees that don't have any budget from the city of Red Deer are maybe committees that we don't need.
Hey, that's an interesting thought.
And I want to explore that. It doesn't mean, for goodness sakes, please don't out there think, oh gosh, she's just going to disband everything. That isn't what I want to do. I would like us to be fully responsible for anything that's out there that represents the city of Red Deer and the goodness in this city. And we can't do that if we don't know what's going on inside those committees.
And it seems like the heart of what you're saying is really we need transparency here, and we need
Openness.
and openness, and
Absolutely.
because you can't have accountability without any of that, right?
Exactly.
So I like where you're going with that. I did think that they did release minutes, but I'll have to double check.
There might be minutes online,
Yeah,
but they don't form part of the council package. So council can
interesting.
choose to go online and look, or it becomes part of your council package and you at least have to look at it
Mhm.
in order, even if it's just a motion to receive. But what if there are things going on within that you think shouldn't be? So I'd ask you, do you have a responsibility for anything where there's a budget and there are things going on within that department or committee that you think shouldn't happen? The only way you know is because you're looking through the minutes of that. Even if there's a councillor that may sit on one of those committees, they don't write them a report to council. They don't go to that committee and come back and say, let me tell you of my
Well, then
experience.
what's the point? Then what's the point?
Exactly.
Isn't that the whole point?
It is the point. It is the point, Calvin. And we are missing, there are whole gaps in our education within those committees that we have no handle on, and yet we fully support whatever their budget is. And in my view, and it is only my view, that we need to take some responsibility for that.
Well, I think I would share that view that council needs to take responsibility for the budget and wherever the money's going, whether it's committee or whether it's to snow plowing or whether it's to anything really. I really think that we need to, and I don't know if this is shifting gears at all, but it does go in the budget. We need to figure out how to talk to the frontline workers a lot more. They have solutions. They have so many solutions and they have ways to save money. I don't know exactly what it is.
Open and transparent and communication.
Yeah. I think that there's likely, I mean, if I was an employee and I saw a solution and it got ignored and it got ignored and it got ignored, for one, you lose heart in a sense where it's like, well, it's never going to go anywhere. But then it's also the idea of, well, maybe they don't want me talking about this. And
maybe staff is afraid to talk to council. I don't think it's an agenda, but I think it might be a practice that staff are not welcomed and I don't think deterred, but not welcomed to speak to council. I come from my first experience. Staff loved to talk to council if they had ideas that they could go forward with. And they loved that we were open to hear their ideas and suggestions. And we never, ever had real unhappiness with our staff because everything was so open and transparent.
Well, we need to get back there.
Oh, please.
That's for sure.
Oh, yes, please.
I mean, I'm just throwing this number out there, but I would wager that we could save 5 to 10% just by talking to our frontline
I believe
staff.
that. I believe that.
That is to not do it. It reminds me of just like administration treats council, where it's like, well, it would be unethical for you to do. Like I maybe I'm wrong there, but I feel like that might be the case. And this is going to take time. And I really hope people understand that, because like, even looking at the budget, it will take probably 2 to 3 years to get line to line.
Absolutely.
Right.
One of the things
but we have to start.
If you're reading anything about, I went looking to see, because I would like us to have our own municipal force.
Okay.
I want it provincially as well. And I know that there are all kinds of Albertans who don't share that.
Mm-hmm.
But having come from a province where we had our own provincial police, it's an entirely different look at how they do business. And so I went to Grand Prairie. I wanted to look at how they're transitioning from RCMP to a municipal force. They're taking 5 years to do that.
Okay.
It's a full transition.
And that's when the RCMP contract runs out anyways, isn't it?
Yes, it
okay,
does.
That's logical.
I believe I heard the Premier say there was some conversation about Ottawa may not want to do contract service like this across Canada. And so we need to be prepared if that's the case. And I think that's maybe one of the reasons why Grand Prairie went forward. What they're saying is the portion that is now the municipal force. So it's a 5-year transition. They think they're saving about $1.5 million a year on going to their own force. And already that municipal force is operating in the best interests of Grand Prairie and chasing the bad guys out of the city. They live there. They work there. It's their community. They have a very vested interest in what's going on there. I would hope that would be the ultimate goal for us if we ever can get this on at least a talking basis to find out how the community would support it.
Well, my take on that is, I mean, I naturally would be for that. I have to remember that, you know, my goal would be to serve the community. And so, I mean, council's elected to make hard decisions, but that's a major shift in my mind. So I would like to see some sort of plebiscite on that if we're going to go that way. But if there is if there's a natural shift, maybe we just need to figure out from the federal government what they're going to do. Because if that's going to happen and we're going to have to do it anyways, we need to be
even
prepared.
Without that happening, Calvin, we're the only major city in Alberta that does not have our own police force. What does that tell you? That you just said, making the hard decision.
Yeah.
I think that's part of it, making that hard decision. If we have enough knowledge to know that it's going to be good for our community and that transition is possible, then I'd say that's one of the hard choices I want to make.
Well, one of the things I need, and the way I just need data, right? I just need the data. And maybe the data will flow through with what's happening in Grand Prairie, and maybe the data will become more clear, and that way I can make that choice on behalf of the community. Until I have that data, I really feel like I would need to defer to Red Deer. I'm not saying that you wouldn't be doing that. Obviously, you're running a campaign and you're talking about this and all that. I just, there's certain things that is like, council shouldn't be making this decision. Recently, we're moving to our power structure and our corporate electric grid. We're pushing that off into a corporation, right? Into a municipally owned corporation. And that's a situation too, where it's like, this is a big deal and people don't realize how big of a deal that is and how that's going to shift a lot of debt over to a corporation and, blur the lines of what the city has and what that corporation has.
But I believe they're forming a commission, right?
Well, they're doing the right things, but the big problem I had was that all they did was look at one question of whether we should do one thing. They didn't say, let's look at a broad options of what we can do with this and so we can have the community's best interest. No, it was one thing that they were very limited on. And so it was a real big problem to me. I believe there was another city that it was either Medicine Hat or Lethbridge, I think, but they actually opted just to wait until the election and let the people decide through it how to do it through the election. And I think that's what Red Deer should have done. But these are issues too that have been going on in the background for years. In Red Deer, I believe the discussion started about 2 years ago. And it just goes back to communicating and telling us what's happening. I say many times where we have the technology now to communicate. It's so easy to communicate, but we don't use the tools out there as a city. And councillors, they don't use the tools that are out there. I mean, I'm doing this to and
it's so appreciated in the community, Calvin. You have no idea.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
So it's just, I mean, one thing that I want to do on council is really amp up how much communication. I don't understand. You're in a 10-hour council meeting and you can't record yourself for 3 minutes to say what happened and to say your thoughts on it. And I know this is becoming more of a second nature to me, but it's like, until you start learning how to do it as a councillor, you're not going to be effective anymore. We're not in 1999 anymore, right? We don't have a media in Red Deer.
I would phrase it a little differently.
Yeah, please
but
do.
You're bang on. I've always felt that each councillor had a project or something that they wanted to bring forward under new business that allowed them to talk to the community about things that are on their mind. And you're saying exactly the same thing. Open it up so that council is actually speaking to the community on the things where they'd like to go forward with.
It just feels, if they're not doing that, it feels
might not
gate-kept.
be the right terminology to use, but it is that at the end of each council meeting, that each councillor has something to say to the community.
It's funny. So people, I've asked other candidates, how are things doing? Now, oh yeah, lots of questions on where I stand. And I'm like, I'm not getting them. I don't know if I'm doing this wrong or what. And they said, Kelvin, you've basically shared where you're at just by doing what you're doing. People know where you're at.
Yes.
So they're not asking you questions because they know where you're at. And so
I hope wherever I'm going through this, that people will know where I'm going as
100%.
well.
Yeah.
I want that so much that people will understand that my love for the city is asking me. My heart is asking me to jump into this race today because I believe that there is such a need for the experience that I bring to the table, that it will benefit the community. And I'm willing to do that because I don't like where we're going. And I've been silent for so long.
I'm glad that you're speaking up.
I had,
you're certainly fun to talk to.
I had a former member of staff. I had occasion to speak to her recently, and she said, our greatest disappointment was that you were not reelected. And where have you been all of these years? Because we want you back at City Hall.
Yeah.
And it was just a very nice compliment, but it has given me food for thought that I'm just one person, and can I make enough difference if I'm there to be of value to the city and the people that we would represent?
Well, I know that you've been asking others through the grapevine. You've been asking others to run and put their name forward as well.
I sure have.
And I mean, I've been doing the same. Even as as close as last week, I would say, hey, you should put your name forward. And it is nice this time because I mean, there are 8 open spots, of course, but there's 4 without incumbents. And I think that has created an atmosphere where I think the natural inclination is to fear when other candidates enter the race and to be like, oh no, like, what if they're better than me? And of course, that's not the case now. And
Here we are doing an interview, and you and I are going to be competitors for
and no,
that
and
vote
you know
out
what?
there. And bless your heart, you're just doing that.
Yeah, and if you become 8th place and I'm 9th, then power to you.
I don't want that not in a heartbeat.
Well, I'm just saying that, like,
Because
I
I
just
would
want to
rather be
see.
9th than you 8th than the other
Well,
way around.
that's very kind. So, but just this, like, it's I just want to see Red Deer be run well.
You and me too.
I just want to see, because you're right, the city has so much, and the city has so much potential. And I mean, I've really become a different person in the last decade from when I ran the first time. You have the children and they grow up, and you learn patience, and you learn values in a different way. You learn, I'll go back to that term that I keep on saying, you learn how to die to yourself, really, because you have to put others ahead. And I really see what the city is doing, and I just wish they were doing that now, where these heritage communities that they're trying to, like, I don't want to keep going back to it, but like, I had a conversation yesterday where the city's not even obeying their own laws. They're not obeying the rental percentages of how many percentages of rentals are allowed. They're not obeying if you're going to build a secondary house or above the garage behind the house.
Yeah, the square footage is
The
so
square,
so
yeah. So
skewed.
there's houses being built behind existing houses that are larger than
Yes,
and that is against city law. And so
it is.
it's variance,
So
variance,
where
variance.
is home inspection on that? Why aren't they catching it and stopping that?
Well, they apply for a variance, and then it's basically, and if you're going to do a variance, I don't believe you need to rezone, which if you rezone, you would need a public hearing.
Yes,
And so
yes,
I will leave it at that. We can make our own conclusions, right?
we can.
Where do you want to go next? I mean,
I think
this has been a great conversation.
I mentioned the pilot project on parking downtown. I think that's, for me, quite a big thing. I'd like to talk about a ward system, actually. This city is growing by leaps and bounds. It's something that I'm not familiar with today. I will be, but since I just decided this on Wednesday, I do have a lot of catching up to do. When I was a sitting councillor, we had to come together with the county. And the war, it was a war. The county had built to the city borders, which was against the law. And so it was just a genuinely big fight. And the province at some point said, either you fix it or we're going to come in and fix it for you. You won't like what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
And so the two councils got together, and we started from a premise that this must be civil and we will find a solution.
Mm-hmm.
And the solution was to give the city of Red Deer land that currently belonged to county, that
Mm-hmm.
we could expand our borders, but we couldn't expand our borders where they were on the south end. And much to my sorrow for the community, some of those boundaries have allowed things like Costco, as an example,
Mm-hmm.
to build outside of the city of Red
Mm-hmm.
Deer. And we haven't been able to influence that, and we certainly don't get revenue from that.
Mm-hmm.
So at that time, there was land to go west and east.
Mm-hmm.
And when we reached, I believe it was 2017, but I'm open to correction on that we would take double that land. I haven't seen a thing about it. I have seen something recently that the county and the city were talking, but I don't know if they went back to that agreement of 2008, 28 or 29, but certainly not. And then I was off council in 2010. So I'm rather anxious to find out if that is in the ballpark, understanding that to take that additional land is an expense for the city. We have to provide busing.
Yeah.
We have to provide fire and first responders.
Yep.
And so on. And so there is a great cost to the city to take that land. But if that agreement is there, we at least need to explore where it has gone and where it should go. Are we wanting the city to be bigger? We, as the city of Red Deer, are kind of a hub for all the small municipalities
we are.
around us. And so for us to have that land to expand, you know, again, think outside the box. We have no idea what we could do with that extra land. And I don't know that anybody's even thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I am. And I believe at some point there was some discussion about a river, just say a river. And the comment was, we don't want that river. Well, my gracious, why wouldn't you want something that brings water?
Mm.
I mean, it goes so against my grain coming from a province that had lots of water that we would always want to go there. And I could go back to the time when they were forming the regions in the province of Ontario. The council of the day in the town where I lived said, we don't want responsibility for that road,
Okay.
north and south. And so what happened is the town of Newmarket, the town of Aurora, the front yard's in Aurora and the backyard is in Newmarket,
Oh my
because that
goodness.
council was so stupid, they didn't want to take responsibility for the road. And there was no way to fix it, actually, after the fact. And
Really?
all that building now to the north, right at the border, is wonderful growth that the city, the town of Newmarket, should have and could have used. It's a very small community, 14 square miles, as opposed to something like the city of Vaughan that's, and Red Deer is growing to that
Yep.
size. It comes back to a ward system that we need seriously to look at because of our size, where I know people are afraid of it because at large you could go to any councillor. That doesn't change if you have a ward system. You can go to any councillor anywhere, but you would have two people inside your ward that are
Mm-hmm.
fighting for the things that you want you should have in your neighborhood. And so I think there's part of that. With this county agreement, it would make it even more important to have something like that, at least a conversation around it.
Yeah.
And it might be one of those things that you'd want to do a plebiscite on. Again, it might be something that in discussion with other communities that have moved from an at-large to a ward system, where they felt there was benefit for the citizens that we represent. And that's really what it's all about. It's not to make your job easier. It's to make yourself more accessible to the people that you represent.
I liked what you said when you said there'd be two people to go to. So you're not envisioning 8 wards in Red Deer.
No, I'm looking at 4.
See, I'm open to it. Like I said, I like data, and there is a group that's put together a lot of data how ward systems have increased engagement, have increased voter turnout, and thereby increasing democratic participation, which is a great thing. I need to see more data, likely, but I would never want to go to 8 wards.
My gracious.
That would be the scary thing. I thought, okay, well, maybe we even split it, 4 and 4, but then I steel man that, and I'm like, then it just becomes a pointing game, and that we don't need that in the city.
We don't need a larger council.
No.
And we don't need the expense of a larger council either.
No, I meant 4 in the north and 4 in the south, so it would still be 8 councillors, but it would create a line where it's a competitive thing, and I don't think that would be great. So I'm like, if we did eventually go that way, I think having 4 wards with 2 councillors each. And the interesting thing is, all the councillors are accessible right now, and I'm not even arguing for wards. I'm just saying how it is. Go ahead and email them and see how many respond.
I can tell you, over this
1 or 2
Accelerator Fund, I emailed all 8 councillors. I heard from 3.
Okay. Well, and you had a rare high number respond. I've emailed councillors before, and I have 1. And there's times when I've had 0. And I know that this is not outside of the norm. And I know there's councillors that have, they respond better. I think it's just in scheduling and organization thing where they set up 4 hours a week or something like that to respond to emails. Fair enough. But I'm just saying that if you assume that you're going to have accessibility because it's at large,
the other thing, councillors have a right to expect a staff person that is part of their everyday job. Why would councillors?
You mean as a whole?
Yes, I do mean that.
Okay. Well, I just want to make sure you weren't meaning yet each counselor gets their own
No,
their
no,
own
no, no,
assistant, because
no,
that would be expensive.
because that's an expense that we don't
Yes.
want to incur.
Yeah.
And besides, if you're going to have a staff person, you need to be doing things that keep them busy, that they have value for the counselors that they're
Yes.
working for. And so I've experienced both, where we didn't have not even a meeting room.
Well,
Counselors
I've been
had no
told
place to go.
I've been told that's what the way it is now.
Well, that's hardly fair.
So you going to City Hall, it's like an annoyance, and you need to make sure, as a counselor, and you need to make sure that, if you're going to meet or if you're going to work in a room, well, there might be a meeting in there in half an hour. You have to keep on moving
Yeah,
around.
well, that was the case when I first ran in another place, and we were always kicked out of there. And you may not like this conversation, but women like detail. And 3 women counselors
Yeah.
said, this is not acceptable. We need a space that belongs to us that we can never be kicked out of. And believe me, it was just dynamite. And the men got out of the road, and eventually we got a spot, we got an office, and we got a staff person.
Okay.
And I think that goes with growth. And you see the city growing. The two towns are compatible in size. It might be a wish list rather than a need, but I don't think so, because if we get down the road to do business in different ways, then we'll find that we need that support staff, because we want to be in touch with the constituents that we represent. And there may not be enough hours in the day for us to do that.
Well, and
you have a
I'm
staff person that's there.
I'm sure there's many emails, asking about healthcare or asking about provincial or federal issues that
Are not our
and
responsibility.
not our responsibility. And if those can be respectfully responded to by a staff person, that makes sense. And I like what you say, because I've asked a couple other candidates where it's like, does council need to go full time? And I got both responses of no, and then also yes, they do. And I like your response, because it's balanced, and it reduces the burden from counselors, and it acknowledges the increase of workload as the
Thank
city
you.
grows.
Thank you very much.
And it is cost effective, because you bump every counselor up to full time, and that was always my problem. You're going to be paying another $120,000 to $160,000 a year, and so your solution is about a third,
Yeah.
maybe a little more than a third, but of the cost. So I like that, because we do have to. Council needs to grow with the complexities of the city.
Yes, absolutely.
We have more roads. We have more zoning issues as clear. I mean, maybe not if we get our way, but we have more issues to deal with. And that means we need to be behind the council table more.
I do want to say I don't have great knowledge about everything. I can only draw on experiences that I've had.
Mm-hmm.
I'm no different from anybody else that is running, with the exceptions of a council that was somewhat different than what I experience here in the city. But it doesn't make me better or bigger or anything than anybody that is running. And I would never, ever want to make anyone running feel that I felt I was superior or anything like that. It's just not where I would.
Well, we all bring different things to the table, right?
And that's all I wanted.
To me, you bring a sense of wisdom, of seeing how things happen in the past, relating them to the future. Of course, we need to move on. We don't always need to look at the past and say we just need that back. But the idea that it doesn't have to be the way that it is right now, and especially you working in a way that, or in the other councils that you were in.
I would like to see us grow out of the things. If we just took Calgary and Edmonton and took the best out of both of those cities, that we could apply to Red Deer. Well, let's do that. It doesn't mean we're copying. It just means that we're looking at future growth and those things that are good for the citizens that we represent.
Hey, I'm okay with copying other success stories. I am okay. It saves us money. We look at like homelessness, the issue of homelessness and addiction. We should be looking where it works. We should be looking at the cities where they don't have those problems.
I so agree with that.
And so I'm 100% okay with copying.
Did I hear somebody say that they're using the Michener Center, that they are doing some detox there? Someone told me that they are already using Michener, but they go in for 2 weeks and then they're kicked out. I don't know if that's true. I would like to see us doing that. So if we're taking the homeless off the street downtown, where do they go?
Yeah.
Well, they need to be going into rehab. I do agree with that. But we have all of this land at the Michener Center. Why aren't we utilizing some of that for the homeless? It just seems to me that it's such a, so it might cost money if there's renovations in some of the buildings there that we would need to upgrade to today's standards. I get that, but we're not sending them out of the downtown core into the residential portion of the city, which I would really not want.
I have been told that Michener is accessible and usable today. I just don't know if they are actively doing anything.
Well, then let's
with it.
hope that it can be something on an agenda that we can be working towards.
Yeah.
If it's
Well,
not already there.
We need to get our act together with the province and really solidify agreements.
Yes.
And I don't know what those agreements would look like right now, but
I don't either.
But
you can't know if you don't explore it.
Exactly. Is there anything else you wanted to talk about?
No, I think this has been a really long conversation.
I wasn't sure what to expect, to be honest. I thought maybe we'll talk for 20 minutes, half an hour, but we covered a lot of ground, and I certainly appreciate you joining me, and I wish you all the luck and success
as I
in
do
the world.
you, Calvin.
Thank you.
As I do you. You've always had my support.
Well, thank you.
I think you're going to be wonderful, the city, and I haven't any doubt that you're going to be elected.
Well,
None.
thank you. I certainly hope so. I certainly hope so. And I hope there's other great candidates too.
Absolutely.
And I mean, I certainly support them. I don't think I've been shy about supporting them, but I
don't know everyone that's running. I can only say for the people that I do know, and there are some wonderful people running.
Yeah.
And I want very much to see them elected.
Yeah. There's a lot of hope in the city right
now. There is, yes.
So, well, thank you everyone for joining. This is the Calvin Goulet-Jones podcast, and I hope you have a great day.